very famous pose in North America. That pose is the Heisman pose, which is the award that's given to the best college football player of the year, the Heisman Trophy. And the Heisman Trophy has that pose. Anyway. All right. So in general, when you lift someone and you sense a sense of weight when you lift them, what does that tell you? It's all your fault. You come for a moment. Just live. Yeah, just come. It's really quite subtle. Please come around very close. Yeah. And just look very carefully at the subtlety of the way that this shoulder lies and the way that this shoulder lies. So this shoulder is a little higher than this one. It's not difficult for me to just touch in such a way that my hand just begins to touch into, and I can find out whether she goes down or whether she comes up. I can always just check. Now you see, watch how clearly her head responds to the movement. All I've done is touch her, and her head, somehow there's a link here. Yeah? Now, if I start to touch here, even in the moment that my palm touches, if I'm really sensitive, I find that she prefers to come into my hand. Now it's funny. Here, she turns her head towards her shoulder lifting. Here she turns her head toward the shoulder that's going away. So it's kind of a funny situation. She's doing this. Boop. Now, if I make the movement to, it's a funny thing, yeah? But if I simply touch here and I listen, now it's very easy, it's super easy to almost be seduced by what they do. And what do I mean by that? If I put my hand on her and her shoulder comes this way and my hand rests this way, and you can see my hand is going now in what direction? I'm drawing it to me, aren't I? Now, the moment I go to lift her head, and I've put my hand here, did I invite her head to be heavier or lighter? On what basis did I invite her to be heavier? What's the determination of the sense of weight? The way that her head can lift. My head, if I make the lightness is always related to where they find support. If I make the movement and I draw her shoulder to her, so now the sense where she's supporting herself is closer to her head. Is her head going to be lighter or heavier? Huh? Really? So how can we set up an experiment of that with mass, objects of mass in the room? Yeah? You have your wheelbarrow again, right? But you put all the weight on, here's the handles, and you put all the weight right next to where you're going to lift. Heavy or lighter? Heavy. If you change the weight further and further down, obviously there has to be an equal and opposite point of support, doesn't there? Now, if I make this movement, yeah, if the pivot point is really close to the place I'm going to lift, then she's only going to be able to lift this right at this point, isn't she? Right? But if the pivot point is something that's equal to the weight of her head that's lifting, so that whole point, now that point is there, isn't it? It's under there, and then the question is where that is. How can I help her find the support there that she would be able to find, that she would be able to take her own weight? Now, I can tell you her head's going to be heavy as hell if it comes up to there. How come her head descended so quickly? Yeah. She doesn't have the base of support. Now, can she lower her head with real skill so that she comes moment by moment by moment by moment into utilizing the point of contact relative to the movement of her head? Yes, as she becomes more skillful in finding the support and gliding the support relative to the movement, then her head, she can control the movement of her head without having to invoke momentum. Yes? But if she's here and she wants to lift, and I want to lift her head, and she's here, and suddenly she's here, and I start to lift, this point, now look at her. She's looking for how she can find the support. And she learned that through her experience. Yeah. And at that point in time, she didn't perceive me making any sense of lift against her. I know that the lesson has become, is integrating within her when, as I make the movement, she's taken over the work, and I don't have to do, she doesn't experience me lifting her. I give a suggestion, and it's like when you're with a good dancer, the subtlety of the touch tells you where the next movement's going to be. Yeah? All right, so she's now discovering, and we watch now, what happened. Look what her shoulder does now. Now her shoulder can go this way, and it can go this way, and it can go this way, and we can now make it so that she can turn her head to her shoulder. We can have her turn her head away from her shoulder. She again begins to have these ways that she, when she lid down, which lay down. LAY. See, it's funny. My very first awareness of movement class in Seattle, Washington, and I've got this big room, and I've got about 25 people in the class. And I said to the group, "Will you please lay down?" And I hear, wait, let me tell the story. And then this woman says, "Young man, I was an English teacher for 35 years. I will lie, but I will not lay. I'm neither a chicken nor a rock." And so every time I say lie and lay, and it's like I go, "Please lie down." So now I can help her with the way that I am lifting through myself in such a way that she doesn't experience. But now she's moment by moment, moment by moment, moment by moment, turning into the table. What has to happen? Now, why is her leg so far behind? Well, that's another question, isn't it? But just this essential first moment. Yeah? Now, again, to just help you understand, biologically, if you've helped a person to be able to do that and that, biologically, they're much safer in the world. Yeah? If that immediate freedom is that and that, you've already significantly impacted their ability to interact and change with the world. Yeah? Yeah.
You said like a good dancer, you can give an instruction.
Yes.
And but you have to have a good listener in the other side, because the question could be how we are good listeners because we are trained to listen and to feel. Well, how is about when you have someone that is like a kind of kinesthetic deaf in your Facebook?
Everyone, every single person who comes to this work is deaf relative to what we consider to be sensitive.
Yeah.
Right? So where did you begin?
Oh, as I was talking with my partner, I tried to, I will begin trying to to transmit to the people, to the person's safety, that they are safety with me,
Yeah.
and that I am listening them.
Yes.
So if I want to be listened, I try to listen.
Yes.
Them.
But again, the general topic that takes place in the Feldenkrais world is that people aren't sensitive and they don't know how to listen. Yeah. Please come and lie down for a moment. This is the general topic. So but I can almost guarantee to you that I can say now, you've sensed for yourself. Is this your right shoulder or your left? It's your right shoulder. Okay, and this one? It's your left shoulder. Now you notice, when I lift your right shoulder, you sense for yourself whether this shoulder lifts more easily or whether this shoulder lifts more easily. You sense. Okay, so now I've begun the dialogue with them, right? And almost no one will not, almost everyone will be able to make that distinction. And if they can't make that distinction, then you find some other way that you begin to involve them in the dialogue to find, then you can ask them, if you were to roll over, if you had to get up, it's an emergency, which way would you go? And as they make the movement, that's right. So there's, no, you start to make the movement, and you start to just watch. That was all that was cohesive. Everything went. Do it. You started. You started. That's it. That's cohesive. Now, when she makes the movement the other way, it's not cohesive. Can you sense a difference between that movement and the other? Yes. Okay. So we're going to work with that. We help people to have a representative move, a first move in which they explore themselves. At the end of the lesson, we can go to this representative room or this reference move, and we can see, is there a difference in the way that you perceive yourself? And then we have to also ask the other set of questions. Are you more comfortable with yourself? Some people won't be, because they don't know what it's like. It's anxiety provoking for them to be quiet. Look, if you go ahead and sit up, please. That's right. If you work with a business executive, right? Perhaps a business executive, a CEO of a corporation that has 300 employees. Yeah? And that business executive comes for the lesson. And first of all, the thing that they don't know is that they come in and they're frazzled at a point of stress that they don't even know the degree to which they're frazzled in themselves. And if you really, really take the time and really, really pay attention and you tune into the person, you'll realize that they're not just frazzled. Frazzled, it means really profoundly stressed. But if you really tune into them, you'll see that they're not just frazzled or just stressed. They're terrified. And they're profoundly terrified because the people in the climate that people face today who have, in their entrepreneurial spirit, have gone to the point that they've put everything that they know into the situations that they're put into them. And they see that they don't have resources to meet the change that's coming. Yeah? They don't have the resources to meet the changing world, the chaos, the uncertainty that's in front of them. And they know that they don't. And they've never been quiet in their life. And you give a lesson for them, and as a result of the lesson, they find that they're in a state of calm. That calmness for them will be more anxiety producing than all the stress, until they learn that it's valuable. Yeah?
What do you do in that case, like say it's the first time? First time the businessman comes in, or woman.
You have to have the reference for them. So if you could live your life in the way that you wanted it, what would you like? What would you like for yourself? And so that they'll tell you, I'd like to be able to handle the situation more comfortably. They'll tell you.
And you know that silence is an integral aspect.
They have to start to recognize it. For the most part, in the public, this is not recognized as useful. We base our sense of well-being on what we can produce and how much effort we put into producing it, at the expense of the ulcers and the bad health and the high blood pressure and the heart that's going to kill you and whatever else it is. Yeah? And the most people that I run into, their way of dealing with the stress is through a fitness regimen, which means more activity. So how are you going to cultivate? Now, some of them will say, I'd like to be more mindful. For what reason? You still have to ask the question, for what reason would you like to be more mindful? Well, then I'll be able to be less stressed. Oh, so you're going to, and then you have to be careful here. Because if I'm practicing meditation to relieve stress, it's not meditation. Meditation in and of itself cannot have a goal in it. Yeah? Meditation for stress reduction, meditation for this, meditation for that, in and of itself is not meditation.
Yeah, I'll go with that.
Okay? So again, our understanding has to come to the place of what's the value in this really profound sense of composure. Gradually, you have to create the environment in which they come to appreciate that.
Yeah, I guess that's
Right.
the curiosity that's
Right.
stirring. It's like, because it's a profound sense of anxiety can upsurge when you first experience a place of silence, or say a walk that
Right.
feels uncomfortable with you, but you sort of, it's, no, there's a foresight of somebody
Yeah.
telling you that it's maybe better or another option or whatever. But
Right.
if you're feeling that in that moment, and that sort of overrides credibility to your experience in that point in time.
We can look across the world, in the Feldenkrais world, in every world. I feel great, but I'm not sure I know what to do. And the anxiety that comes with this. So the other question is, how do I then, again, find the composure and then utilize this great ability I have to ask questions as the place of composition, rather than being in the place of anxiety trying to produce results.
Yeah,
we're in the middle of this really, really tricky place.
I imagine that's taking them out of a place where stress was their support and into a place where calm might be so unfamiliar that it doesn't feel supportive.
That's what they've always, how they've always known themselves, based on the agitation that they've done to produce a sense of meaning. And it's in every pore of themselves.
So I guess that begs the question, how do we take them to a place of calm and show them more support than they had when they were stressed?
In such a way that they begin to say, I am willing to adopt this because it's a better place for me in my life than the other. This is I think this is the most interesting place. Yeah. Now, you're learning to produce this place in which the person finds the ability to discriminate in themselves. And like I said, neurologically, if they're making discriminations, they cannot do that from a point of stress. You can't answer to do high-level mathematics in emotional turmoil, right? The only way that you'll be able to make those discriminations is if you have the ability to calmly and in a collected way be able to see all the alternatives by which you make the next decisions. Yeah. So here we are again. There's a wonderful talk that Moshe gives, and I can heartily recommend. It's on awareness. It's on the IFF site, and it's an hour talk that Moshe gives in 1971 in New York City. It's a hysterical. The videos in black and white. Everybody has long hair, and Guys are sitting and smoking cigarettes during the talk. Have you seen the talk? Yeah. It's an hour and 2 minutes, and Moshe again in 1971 demonstrates his virtuosity in understanding the human nervous system in talking about a more human and the utilization of of ourselves and the utilization of our brain to come to the state of being a more human. In 1971, he's again 71. He's still 30 years ahead of what eventually came into the world in neuroplasticity. So, okay, it's time for lunch. See you in an hour. All right. Was okay? The exploration was okay? You were